So the UFC is going to be returning to Perth this weekend, headlined by Carlos Ulberg and Dominick Reyes, and this should honestly be a pretty fun card. In my opinion, there's 14 fights on the card. I will say it is a bit of a quality over quantity card. However, 14 fight cards, they always do get me quite excited, especially in the downstairs area. Now, before I do get into it though, I have been breaking down the contender series throughout the year. Have been going really, really good until the last couple of weeks. So hopefully tomorrow, my contender series week 7 picks hold up well. But if you did want to check out more of that, check out my other videos on my channel. I have been predicting that contender series. And also, I am a little bit late on this video. I do normally upload my videos on Sunday. It is now Tuesday, so I am quite late on this one, but I have had quite a busy couple of weeks with life. You know, I have been managing a couple of events in the disc golf world because I do throw frisbees for fun, and also, of course, university has been a pretty busy one this year. Now, let's get into it, of course, with the first fight on the Tapology bout order. This bout order, of course, is not finalized, but it is Loma Lookboonmee taking on Alexia Thainara, and I do like Thainara in this matchup. Now, I do recognize that Loma Lookboonmee is a very talented fighter. She does have very good striking, and her wrestling and grappling is something that she has been using to win fights in the past as well. So overall, we have seen that Lookboonmee is a very good fighter. However, I think that Thainara is really starting to prove herself to be a top talent in this division. She looked really good on the contender series against Rose Conchechao, who is a multiple-time Brazilian national wrestling champion, and I believe at the time was the LFA champion. Now, of course, that win hasn't aged that well, but it was a great performance. And then from there, she did absolutely smoke Molly McCann, and I think McCann is now retired. Lookboonmee is, of course, going to be a big step up in competition, but I do like Thainara's style to beat her. I think she also has dominant Muay Thai in her own way. Also is going to have a bit of a size advantage and can offensively grapple, which is something I think we're going to see here. So I'm going to pick Thainara to win this fight, and I think it is going to go all 3 rounds. And now we have Brando Pericic taking on Elisha Ellison, and this is a fight that, of course, was going to be on the contender series quite a few weeks ago. Both of these guys have now signed to the UFC, and it's going to be taking place in Perth. Relatively appropriate, considering the UFC has been going on a massive signing spree right now, signing so many heavyweights, booking so many heavyweights. You'll see them over the next few months. Like, there's just some absolute interesting fellows that they've picked up, and Elisha Ellison and Brando Pericic are 2 of those new signings. I think Pericic is really good, but I think that in moments his inexperience does kind of show, and I think that it really did show in his loss against Randall Raymond, because he was really beating up Randall Raymond to start the fight, and then he just couldn't finish it in round 1, ended up kind of gassing out, ended up kind of giving up a big position, and ended up losing by submission. But aside from that, he hits really hard. Like, this guy has 1 punch KO power. He knocked down Raymond with 1 punch. And I do think that he is the better striker out of these 2 guys in Elisha Ellison. Elisha Ellison's interesting to me because I think he actually has a BJJ background. I know that's something that come up when I was looking into him in my research for the Contender Series matchup. And I do think as well, Pericic is going to be the bigger guy in the octagon here. Ellison, kind of like Pericic, hasn't really been tested against super high level guys, but I do think in this matchup, I think Pericic is going to land that big shot against Ellison. I think he's going to get a big knockout in his debut. Michelle Montague takes on Luana Carolina, and I honestly do think that this is 2 things: a good signing from the UFC, from the PFL, and secondly, pretty good matchmaking from the UFC as well, to make this fight happen as well. It's going to be taking place at 135 pounds. I believe this is the first time Montague has fought at 135 in a while, because she was fighting at 145 pounds, of course, and I think even maybe at 155, if I'm not mistaken, against opponents in the PFL. All of her wins in their professional career are by rear naked choke, and a lot of them are pretty quick as well. She also had a very impressive amateur career. Of course, Michelle Montague is from New Zealand, but she does train and live in the United States. She's going to do what she wants to do, which is just go for a takedown and get a rear naked choke. And Luana Carolina has proven to be a pretty tricky fighter for people like Montague to deal with, being a Muay Thai striker, having decent enough takedown defense, but I do think there is going to be a size advantage on the Montague side, and I do think Montague is going to be able to go out there and get her takedowns, and eventually she's either going to finish the fight by submission, but I also could see this fight go in the distance, as this is definitely a step up in competition for Michelle Montague. And now we can move up to Colby Thicknesse taking on Josias Musasa, and here's the thing about Josias Musasa. I wish I did it. I wish I picked him to lose against Carlos Vera, because I put $25 on Carlos Vera to win that fight by submission, and it returned me $325. Probably the best bet I've ever placed, just in terms of value. But I ended up picking Musasa. I just kind of bet the Vera side because I didn't think that Musasa had the grappling knowledge to deal with someone tricky like Vera, who rolls for leg locks and stuff like that. I think this is a bit of a different matchup though. Colby Thicknesse didn't impress me much in his fight against Ilia Topuria's brother Alexandre, and I did see a lot of sort of moments in that fight that made me think that Josias Musasa can go out there and knock out Colby Thicknesse. Musasa is a very intriguing fighter to me, because he is a boxer with some of the craziest power I think I've ever seen at this 135-pound division. You watch his fights before the Contender Series, and he is knocking guys out in one punch. It is brutal. He's got a lot of ground and pound finishes as well, but in general, my goodness, is this guy putting on some fun fights. And honestly, I did pick him to lose against Atari Tanzalov. I thought that Tanzalov was just going to be a little bit more well-rounded, but in general, I think Musasa is a very fun fighter to watch, and I do think he's going to land on that chin of Colby Thicknesse. Sorry, so the pick is Musasa by knockout, and he actually is, I believe, the favorite in this matchup as well, minus 150 there. Now we can move up to Jamie Mullarkey taking on Rolando Bedoya. I do think that Mullarkey can get this one done. Now, the problem is Mullarkey's chin is very questionable. The striking defense is very questionable. It's been tested. It's failed time and time again. However, if you do actually really look into this, Muhammad Naimov, despite this fight being a short notice opponent for him, Naimov has gone on to do pretty good things in the UFC. Haqparast is on a very impressive, underrated win streak right now. And Rufi, despite losing to BSD, is still one of the top prospects in the lightweight division. Now, the McDessie decision, questionable. Very questionable, and he's in Australia, so what's to say he's not going to get another questionable decision here? Rolando Bedoya, he's a very high-volume fighter, but also like Mullarkey, he just doesn't really have any defense and doesn't really have too much of a backup plan from there. Now, remember, he had a very close fight against Chaos Williams, and then since then he just has not been able to really put it together. And I do think that Jamie Mullarkey can use his range, can use his length, and I think with that, he can go out there and beat Rolando Bedoya over 3 rounds. And now we move up to an intriguing fight between Jonathan Mikulev and Aubin Elliott. And a lot of people, of course, are now trying to fade Aubin Elliott, now with 36% of people picking Mikulev in this fight. And I was actually going to pick Aubin Elliott just kind of with the thought of, Aubin Elliott, he just had that loss to Seok Hyun Ko, which isn't a bad loss. Like, I know a lot of people are going to look at that and think, oh, he got out-wrestled by Seok Hyun Ko. Seok Hyun Ko is a 2021 Sambo World Champion and is the first ever fighter out of South Korea. No, I think he's 2019 Sambo World Champion. I apologize. It is the first ever fighter from South Korea to ever become a world champion in Sambo. So a loss to Seok Hyun Ko, I don't think there's any shame in that. Seok Hyun Ko is pretty good. He beat Igor Cavalcanti on the Contender Series, who was a 9-0 Brazilian prospect. He's a big underdog. So Ko's a good fighter. And Aubin Elliott, I feel like maybe just he was a little bit overhyped in my opinion, because if you do go back to his career not even that long ago, he had that pretty poor performance against Kayak Brito, which I still to this day think he lost. He had this fight against Val Woodburn, which Woodburn nearly knocked him out in. Scary. And then after that, he just didn't wrestle against Basil Hafez at all. And that is kind of what gave me confidence to pick Mikulev, because the thing about Aubin Elliott is I think that wrestling is the best part about his game. And if he's going to go out there like he fought against Basil Hafez and not wrestle, Jonathan Mikulev is going to be the guy going out there who I do think is going to have the better striking, and Mikulev can offensively wrestle very effectively himself. The thing about Mikulev is his Contender Series win against Muhammad Ado has aged very poorly. My pick to pick Muhammad Ado to beat Mikulev has also aged very poorly. But Ado, is a really talented fighter. And Mikulev beat him in the first round easily. He went out there and he looked decent against Kevin Doucet, had a lot of moments on the feet in that fight. And I think that against Alman Elliott, I think that this is another step up in competition for Mikulev. But I do respect the fact that this guy's striking is improving with every single fight. You can go back and you can even watch his fight against Alden Bates. You can watch his fight against Luciano. The striking is very sloppy. He's just coming forward, but is getting a lot more controlled, a lot better in his most recent performances. And I think we are going to see another improved Mikulev as an underdog here at plus 102. I'm going to pick Mikulev to beat Alman Elliott. Now, Andre Petroski fights against Cam Rowston. And I actually do have a Cam Rowston hoodie somewhere around here. Here it is. Give me a moment to put this together. But I do have a Battle Giraffe hoodie. So shout out to Cam Rowston for sending me that, and I also have a Battle Giraffe t-shirt as well. But this is gonna sound like really I guess like traitorous potentially, but I do find myself picking Andre Petroski in this fight. Now, despite me being a big fan of Cam Rowston, despite me being a supporter of Cam Rowston, I just have to look at the experience of Petroski, the 8-3 UFC record, the 11 UFC fights, to the debuting Cam Rowston, and kind of view also what Andre Petroski is best at, and something that Rowston has struggled with in the past, which is the wrestling. And that does give me pause to find myself picking the former King of the Ring tournament kickboxing champion. So, because Torres Finney was able to find so much wrestling success against Rowston, I do think that Petroski can do the same thing. But the thing about Rowston, I could see him knocking out Petroski for sure, because Petroski's striking is really bad. It's really bad, and it's not getting better. All he really has is a left hook, and not much more than that. And I think that if Cam Rowston can prove me wrong, and he can defend the takedowns, I think he could go out there and have a great performance. Just the problem is, I'm just not 100% sure if I can back it, based on the fact that he did take on a striker and a relatively inexperienced one in Holmes, and then after that, after his loss to Finney, we didn't see him test himself against really top wrestlers. So, for that reason, I do unfortunately have to side with Petroski to win this matchup. And now we have Navajo Sterling taking on Rodolfo Bellato. Navajo Sterling, someone who I got to, this is going to sound weird, but look at the Stealth Fight League. So shout out to Stealth Fight League. That was a great event, which we did watch Fergus Jenkins win a decision over 3 rounds in. And Sterling was there, and he is a big boy. This guy's got big shoulders. Very big shoulders. And I'll talk about Louie Sutherland in a moment. But Navajo Sterling is a big guy for the weight class. And the thing that gives me a little bit of nervousness regarding this fight, right, is I have always said that Rodolfo Bellato sucks. Always. I said that he sucked when he went on the Contender Series and I picked Murtaza Talha to win. Little did I know that Murtaza Talha had literally sprained his ACL 3 months before that fight, so no wonder he lost. He looked terrible against Ihor Potieria. He looked bad against Jimmy Crute. I mean, the Paul Craig fight was what it was. So I've kind of put in a lot of weight in this fight, because if Navajo Sterling loses this fight, I'm not going to be happy about it. So I think that Sterling does win. I think that Sterling's takedown defense is good enough. Now, I will say, in the UFC, the performances haven't really come in a way that I expected. I really did think he was going to knock out Tuko Tokos, who just doesn't really have that striking threat. Against even Erslan, that was a little bit boring. He never really got after it until the 3rd round. And I don't know if Rodolfo Bellato was just going to let him pick him apart for 3 rounds with the traditional, very well-renowned CKB leg kick and jab style. I do think that Bellato is going to be coming forward, and he's going to be dangerous. He's going to be attempting takedowns, and he's going to be throwing boxing combinations as well. So that's something that Sterling is going to have to worry about. But I think that Sterling, I think he's the much better striker here. Once again, another King of the Ring tournament kickboxing champion, a former kickboxing world champion, not for glory, but for a smaller sort of kickboxing league, I guess you would call it. But yes, that Sterling does have kickboxing background before he come over to MMA. I'm going to believe in that. I'm going to believe in that and pick him to beat Rodolfo Bellato here. And now Tom Nolan fights against Charlie Campbell. And I think this is a tough one to pick, man, because I think Charlie Campbell's quite good. And I also think that Tom Nolan's very good. And I like Tom Nolan a lot at 155 pounds, just given his frame. How often do you see someone that is 6'3" with a 73-inch reach at 155 pounds? Not often. And the thing about Tom Nolan is I do think in the past we did see that he wasn't able to really utilize those physicals as effectively as we would have liked to have seen. He was really just crashing the pocket, closing into the clinch, and kind of was forcing a lot and trying to do too much. I think the performance against, unfortunately, Nicholas Motta shows this, and I think also against Victor Martinez shows it as well. And even against Alex Reyes as well, he was a very over-aggressive in that fight. But against Vyacheslav Borchev, we saw him fight with a much more intelligent game plan, was able to go out there and was able to offensively wrestle against Borchev, which showed good fight IQ in my opinion, and was able to kind of stay safe from the striking of Vyacheslav Borchev, who is a very good kickboxer, a guy with hundreds of amateur kickboxing fights in Russia. Charlie Campbell, on the other hand, is a very powerful boxer. He's a big guy. He's also a pretty active fighter. He's been calling for fights. He's always been stepping up on short notice for fights. And I think that he's all fun, man. Like, this guy has some great performances. You know, he did lose to Chris Duncan, but he was beating Chris Duncan up, knocking him down all over the place before that happened. And Chris Duncan has gone on to be a pretty good prospect himself, right? And he knocked out Alex Reyes. He had a banger against True the Peak, which we even saw a little bit of grappling, just a little bit. And I do think against Tom Nolan, we probably could see him go out there and try and mix it up and try and land on that chin of Tom Nolan, which he does leave open on occasion. But I'm going to believe in the improvements from Nolan. I'm going to believe in the size advantage here, that he can keep Charlie Campbell at range. But Campbell's not a small guy at 155 either. He's 6 foot tall, big guy as well for 155. I think we're in for a banger. I think someone's getting knocked out, and I'm going to be picking Nolan to win by knockout in this matchup against Charlie Campbell. And now we have the Tafa gang. Now, unfortunately, Junior Tafa had to pull out against Ivo Erslan. That ruined my day, finding out about that, because I was going to pick Junior Tafa to beat Ivo Erslan. And I'm going to be picking Justin Tafa to knock out Louie Sutherland as well. The thing about Justin Tafa is there is a level of heavyweight competition that he does knock out. And I do believe that Louie Sutherland does fall in that area. Now, I don't want to disrespect Louie Sutherland in any way, but I just think that from what I saw, this is the kind of fighter that I think that Justin Tafa can find success again. He clearly has some sort of kickboxing sort of experience or athletic background or some way, because despite being a pretty big boy, like, this guy was able to throw up a lot of high kicks, was able to move light on his feet, and was able to crash the distance quite a lot. Now, a lot of his game does involve the clinch, which we do know Justin Tafa isn't really a strong suit. We know that the Tafa brothers just don't train wrestling. It is something they've never heard of before. They just want to stand there and they want to knock people out. That's their words. That's not mine. And Louie Sutherland also wants to stand there and he wants to knock people out. Now, this fight against Luke Newland was a bit of a banger. And then before that, this fight did involve a lot of clinching from Sutherland. But I want to know something from you guys, right? How does one acquire this build? How do you... These are the upper traps I'm looking at, right? Like, is this just shoulder shrugs? Do you just do a lot of shoulder shrugs to make this happen? I mean, I just need to know. Because this is ridiculous. And another thing about Louie Sutherland as well is his side delts are insane. Absolute boulder shoulders, man. Like, this guy's shoulder genetics are just ridiculous. Like, it's insane. There could be something else going on, but I have reason to doubt it, just kind of given the size of the rest of his body. But my goodness, Louie Sutherland's shoulders are absolutely massive. But I think that Justin Tafa does knock him out, though. I think this is the level of competition that Tafa can go out there and stand and bang against and knock out. We move up to Jake Matthews, as he does take on Neil Magny. I give myself a lot of pause looking at Matthews as a minus 500 favorite in this matchup, because Matthews, I will say, recently he's been looking fantastic, but Matthews has always been a bit of an inconsistent fighter The skill set has always been there. But one day, he's outboxing Andre Fialho, landing combinations and knocking him out. And then the next day, he's getting outboxed by Matthew Semmelsberger over 3 rounds, who after that went on to not really find that much success. So, what version of Jake Matthews is showing up? And the version of good Jake Matthews has been here in this sort of run here. He looked good against Darius Flowers, who did fight him on short notice. I would say he put up a respectable performance against Michael Morales. And from there, we've just kind of seen him find a lot of success, including a very quick win over Chidi Njokwani. And I think against Neil Magny, shout out to Neil Magny, I've always got to give him his flowers, because Magny will always fight the next guy that's on the come up. Look at Magny's career, man. Like, this is like an underrated, like, BMF kind of run. Everyone kind of like laughs at Magny for having all of his losses and stuff, but like, look at the guys he's fighting, dude. Like, this is insane. He always steps up, man. Always steps up every single time. But I think that Matthews can box him up. The boxing of Matthews is very, very good. The BJJ of Matthews is very good. Now, of course, Magny can grapple. He got this sub over, it was a long time ago now. Over D-Rod. My goodness. That's how often Neil Magny fights, I guess. But, I do think that Jake Matthews, will go out there, put the box in on him, maybe attempt some takedowns potentially, and I think in general we'll just kind of win a 3-round affair. I don't know how I feel about him being minus 500, because Magny's got some skills to him too, man. Magny can wrestle, Magny can clinch, he can strike from range. Jack Jenkins takes on Ramon Taveras. I like Jenkins a lot in this matchup. I don't really think that Ramon Taveras is a guy that can challenge the guys in the UFC, to be honest. I thought he lost the rematch against Soho City. This was really weird in general that they did it. I guess just because Dana thought it was a early stoppage, but he missed weight in the fight anyway. So it's like, what were we doing here? So I thought he lost against City, then he lost to Grant, and he's just taking on another relatively similar stylistic matchup in Jack Jenkins here. A guy that's going to be kicking in his legs for 3 rounds. And I think that he does beat Ramon Taveras by doing that. Taveras is a very one-dimensional boxer. He doesn't really offer much more than that. We've seen the fact that Jenkins can grapple offensively if he needs to, but the story of Jenkins' career is always just the leg kicks. The leg kicks, the leg kicks, the leg kicks. Now, I don't think that Jake Jenkins is the best fighter in the world. I think we've kind of seen it proven that he's not going to be the next Alexander Volkanovski, but he's still a very talented guy. And the reason why I say that is you could say, oh, that's really rude of you to say. Why would you say that? That's because he had a too competitive matchup against Don Shanis, and then I thought he lost to Jamal Emmers. But still, I think he's going to kick the legs out of Taveras, and I think eventually he's going to win this fight either by knockout in the 2nd or the 3rd round. And I think he's going to win the fight by decision or TKO in round 2 or 3. And don't forget, he can also offensively wrestle quite effectively too. I like Jenkins a lot in this fight. Already at the co-main event. This can't be the co-main event. Is this a co-main event? My goodness. I think that Sterling versus Bellato is a little bit more of an appropriate co-main event, but hey, this is what it is. I think Crute does beat even Erslan, but the thing is, Crute's striking is so bad, even Erslan might be able to knock him out, but I highly doubt it. Erslan is a guy that they signed, I think, from KSW, actually, and I had some excitement about him coming over to the UFC. And if you guys do recall, on September 28th, I made a crazy call on Jacob's live stream. And I think Jacob put like $120 on Ion Kutalaba to win by submission. We nearly got it in round 2. We really did. But anyways, I do think that Jimmy Crute is going to go out there and get that submission for us. Because despite Crute's striking ability probably being the worst in the UFC, maybe Kevin Christian actually could be worse. I do take that back a little bit. Yeah, Kevin Christian definitely has worse striking than Jimmy Crute, but he's bottom 5, and I think that he knows it. Yeah, well, he didn't know it, which is why he was getting knocked out all the time. But he knows it now, which is why he didn't really strike too much against Pragnell. Very smart game plan. I think if he does that against Erslan, goes out there, tries to take down Erslan as soon as he possibly can, he should get the takedown. He should find the submission. Jimmy Crute, arm triangle choke. Round number 1. Lock that in. Let's move on to the main event. Dominick Reyes is going to be taking on Carlos Ulberg, and I am going to be picking Carlos Ulberg in this matchup. Now, Reyes has had a fantastic run recently, and I am still very happy for him because, of course, everyone knows he beat John Jones. Everyone knows this, and then unfortunately, the worst thing that could have possibly happened to him happened. He went on a massive losing streak, and now everyone's trying to discredit the performance. That's sad. But then, since then, he's gone on a run. He knocked out Jacoby in what I thought was a nightmare matchup for him. Look at me. I'm an idiot. And then he knocked out Anthony Smith. Put Anthony Smith actually in the position that Smith is most well known for, which is on his knees, accepting defeat, just like Ming Yang Zhang ended his career. Very, very appropriate for Anthony Smith. And then he knocked out my boy, Nikita Krylov, who's been on a terrible run recently. And it's so sad. But anyway, the point is, Reyes has been on a great run recently. However, I am still picking Ulberg to win. I think that Ulberg over... It's hard, isn't it? Because Reyes has looked so good. He's looked so good. I think that Ulberg over 5 rounds has a really good style to kind of piece up Reyes and maybe make it boring. Here's the thing about the CKB style. Nearly every single one of the CKB fighters that are up and coming fight with the same sort of style. And maybe one day someone's going to figure it out, but they've had champions, they've had challenges, and we haven't really seen it exposed on the feet yet. And I don't know for sure if Reyes is just going to kind of go out there and completely shut down the game plan of Ulberg. Now, maybe we see Reyes knock him out, which could also happen, but I think that Ulberg has kind of proven to be reasonably defensively sound. He just beat the absolute corpse of Jan Blachowicz. He beat Volkan Oezdemir, who's a very good striker as well. And I do think that despite the relatively poor performance against Dawoon Jung, we are going to see Carlos Ulberg go out there and have another sort of classic Carlos Ulberg performance where he fights like a little bit more of an active Israel Adesanya, where he's going to go out there, he's going to be kicking the legs of Reyes, he's going to be working the body of Reyes, which we know is something that has worked in the past. Jan Blachowicz, of course, did it himself. And I think that against Reyes, he's just not going to get caught up in the exchanges. He's just not going to get caught up into the brawl that Reyes is probably going to want to make it, because Reyes is just a really, really fast, ridiculously athletic light heavyweight. Like, it's insane how fast he is at this weight class. But I think that Ulberg, I think that if he can make it low volume, if he can make it controlled, if he can threaten his counter punches, I think we're going to see Ulberg find his success in this matchup against Dominick Reyes. And I think eventually Ulberg is going to probably just wear him down and win a decision. Now, maybe you could just kind of pick Ulberg to win based on the fact that maybe Reyes' chin is done, and we just haven't seen someone get the opportunity to put him out again. Because when Span knocked him out with that jab, I thought it was over. I thought it was over for him in 2024, but it's not. I'm going to be picking Ulberg to win this fight by decision. And I think after that, if the fight's pretty entertaining, we might see Ulberg, of course, fight for the title against the winner of Ankalaev versus Pereira. Hopefully Pereira, because let's be honest, Ulberg versus Pereira, way more exciting fight than Ulberg versus Ankalaev. But you know what? We've never been able to get blessed with nice things. God continues to punish me, despite me believing that I haven't really been doing anything wrong. But that's just life, guys. That's just life. And with that, wise words, I will see you guys in the next one.